Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are putting on our thinking caps and venturing into a world where the smallest detail, something you normally just glance over, actually holds the key to everything.
Exactly. We're not just reading a report here. We're looking at how, a perfect illusion, meticulously built, was shattered by just one tiny accidental mistake.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We're stepping away from the digital world and heading back to, foggy, gaslit 19th century London.
Right. The perfect kind of setting for secrets and deception to thrive. Our goal is to put ourselves in that Baker Street apartment. Imagine a quiet evening, suddenly interrupted.
Picture it, fog swirling outside the windows. Our main guy, the fugitive barrister, famous for digging relentlessly for the truth in legal matters.
Yeah.
He's deep into some complex text. It's quiet, focused.
Intellectual.
And then, bam, the telephone rings. Piercing, urgent. It just cuts right through that silence. You know immediately this isn't just a chat.
No. That's the sound of a carefully constructed lie starting to crack. It's an urgent call from the Metropolitan Police Detective Inspector Howard, specifically. And he sounds unsure.
He reports a death over on Maple Street. A Mrs. Parker found dead in her apartment.
And the initial story sounds straightforward, doesn't it?
Yeah, seems open and shut. Apparent suicide. Sleeping pills, you'd think, okay, case closed.
But Howard, he's got doubts. He actually uses the word inconsistencies, things that just don't quite line up with his usual procedures.
And that little seed of doubt, that hesitation from Howard, that's really our mission for this deep dive, isn't it?
Absolutely. We're not just going to accept that first police report. We're going to follow the barrister's method, step by step. See how he turns those tiny inconsistencies into solid proof.
It's all about how knowledge, real knowledge, comes from questioning the stuff everyone else overlooks, not just accepting the obvious answer.
Exactly. It's about questioning those anomalies that were probably designed to mislead in the first place.
So we'll walk through the whole thing, starting with how the scene looked at first,
Yeah.
then the forensic bits, the fake witness.
Right. And finally, how it all comes together in the confrontation.
It's really a masterclass in how human error, just one slip-up in the staging, can bring the whole thing crashing down.
And the barrister's real genius, I think, is his grasp of criminal psychology. He knows that when a scene looks too perfect, too peaceful, too easy.
That's when the alarm bells should ring.
Precisely. That's the moment to step back and realize the staging itself is the evidence. That forced calmness, that's the sign the killer was trying way too hard to sell a story they thought the police would buy.
Okay, so let's start where they started, the initial assessment. Inspector Howard gives the basics. Mrs. Parker lived alone, maid found her in the morning, looks like sleeping pills. Seems straightforward.
Like you said, straightforward on the surface. But what were those specific inconsistencies nagging at Howard?
Right, what were they?
Well, two main things really didn't fit the suicide idea. First, and maybe the most obvious, no suicide note.
Ah, okay, yeah, that's a big one.
It is. Now, not everyone leaves one, of course.
Yeah.
But in a scene that otherwise seems almost, arranged, its absence is significant. It feels like a gap.
Suggests maybe it was sudden? Or
That the killer just overlooked it, or maybe didn't want to risk forging her handwriting. Either way, it's a missing piece in the suicide puzzle.
okay, what was the second thing?
This one really throws doubt on her state of mind, which is key in suicide cases. A neighbor saw Mrs. Parker the evening before and reported she seemed genuinely happy. Buoyant, even.
Happy, hours before supposedly taking her own life. That doesn't track.
Exactly. Suicide usually comes after a period of, despair or isolation, someone seeming visibly cheerful right before. It creates this immediate psychological contradiction.
So no note, and she seemed happy. Those were the triggers for the barrister.
Those were the catalysts, yeah. They immediately shifted the focus from sad tragedy to suspicious circumstances.
Okay, so now we're heading to Maple Street with the barrister and Inspector Howard. The description is pretty atmospheric, isn't it? Old building, dim streetlight, that classic London fog.
Sets the mood perfectly. Secrecy, hidden things. The police are already there, doing their thing, marking evidence. Standard procedure.
And the police are looking at the big picture, right? Body, pills, the room layout.
Yes, the standard checklist. The barrister, though, he's immediately looking for the micro details. He goes right to the bed where Mrs. Parker is lying, and his very first observation is critical.
What does he see?
He notes she looks peaceful, almost too peaceful.
Hold on, too peaceful. Isn't peace what someone might want in their final moments if they were?
That's a great question, but it's about the process of dying. A large overdose of sleeping pills is rarely a serene event. Medically, there's often distress, maybe vomiting, the body fights back.
Ah, I see. So a completely placid appearance is unnatural.
It suggests she might have already been unconscious, or maybe even dead, when she was placed in that position. It hints at arrangement, at staging, like someone posed her to look peaceful, to sell that suicide narrative.
So it's the difference between finding someone who died naturally or finding someone who was deliberately positioned after death.
Precisely. The lack of any sign of struggle or disorder around her body, that's the red flag. If the piece is fake, then maybe everything else is too.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. The artificiality is the clue.
And that leads directly to what the barrister considers the absolute game changer. The one piece of evidence that just demolishes the idea she died alone.
And that's found on the nightstand.
On the nightstand, yes. You got the obvious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The empty pill bottle, a glass of water, half spilled. Howard sees the suicide kit.
But the barrister sees something else.
He's not looking at the items so much as the small tray they're sitting on. He notices the tray is easily big enough for 2 glasses. And crucially, while the water glass has left a clear, wet ring, he sees the space where a second cup should have been, but there's only one cup mark, or rather the imprint of where one was.
Wow. Okay, hang on. Why is the absence of a second mark, or maybe the faint trace of one, so important? That seems incredibly subtle.
It's subtle, but it destroys the core premise. Solitude. If she was alone, why have a tray big enough for 2, and why is there evidence suggesting 2 items were recently there?
So the faint ring, or maybe just the clean space where condensation would have been.
Exactly. It implies someone else was there, drinking with her, perhaps. And crucially, that someone took their glass away, but didn't perfectly wipe away the evidence of it having been there.
Let's unpack that mistake. The killer is careful enough to remove their actual glass.
Right, the physical object.
But they miss the almost invisible trace it left behind. Why?
Think about the killer's mindset. Panic. Hurry. They've just committed murder, staged a scene. They grab their glass. Get rid of anything I touched. That's the priority.
Makes sense.
But they probably didn't think about, say, condensation. If their glass had a cold drink and it sat on that tray, even for a short time.
It would leave a faint ring or mark from the temperature difference?
Exactly, a ghost print.
Yeah.
They're focused on removing the obvious, tangible evidence, the glass itself. They overlook the ephemeral trace left behind. Wiping the whole tray might disturb the other glass, the pills. It complicates the staging.
So that almost invisible circle is proof someone else was there. Proof of company, collaboration maybe, and likely involvement.
It shatters the suicide by solitude theory instantly. The killer prioritized removing the object over erasing the trace. It's a classic staging failure driven by panic and haste.
So the case instantly flips. It's not suicide, it's homicide, staged, and the killer made a mistake during the cleanup.
That single tiny detail becomes the absolute foundation for rebuilding the entire investigation. It shows how the biggest lies can be undone by the smallest physical truths.
Okay, so the presence of a killer is basically established by that cup mark. Now we need to figure out how they did it, the method.
Right. If it's homicide, the killer needed tools, a weapon, essentially, and a way to fool the police.
Let's start with the weapon, the pills themselves.
The barrister shifts focus now from the staging to the actual means. He picks up the empty medicine bottle, looks closely at the label, the origin.
And what does he find?
He quickly sees they were imported from Germany. And, more importantly, these weren't just any pills. They were difficult to find unless personally delivered.
Imported. German, that's unusual. Your average sleeping pills, you just get them from the local chemist, right?
Exactly. Using something rare, imported, specifically sourced like this, it screams premeditation. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment crime using whatever was handy.
It suggests the killer went to some effort. They had contacts, maybe, or specific knowledge.
It implies a calculated plan. Either they knew someone who could get these pills, or they had a direct connection themselves. It certainly wasn't Mrs. Parker popping down to the corner shop. This pushes the source outside her normal routine.
And it also suggests maybe a more sophisticated killer. Someone who thought about using something less common, harder to trace.
Potentially, yes. Someone who took deliberate steps.
Yeah.
But the next detail is even more chilling, because it points to how they might have administered those pills.
What's that?
The barrister gets closer to the body, near the pillow. He leans in, sniffs, and frowns. He detects a very strong scent.
A scent? What kind?
Lavender. Lavender scent freshly sprayed.
Lavender. That sounds nice. Peaceful, even? Like something someone would use at bedtime.
That's likely what the killer intended. It seems innocent. But the barrister immediately flags it. Why? Because it was too strong for a bedtime fragrance.
Too strong, like overpowering.
Exactly. Pungent, dense, not just a hint of calming scent. And the barrister's mind instantly jumps to strong smells are often used to cover up other smells.
Masking something else.
Yes. He suspects it's meant to mask something. Chloroform, perhaps?
Chloroform, okay, that has a distinctive smell, right? Sweetish, heavy.
Very distinctive, yes. And it lingers. So if you wanted to hide that smell, you'd need a powerful counter-fragrance. Lavender is common, volatile, seems innocent.
But you'd have to use a lot of it to cover the chloroform smell effectively.
And that's the killer's mistake, overdoing it. The barrister, using his senses, notices the intensity is wrong, disproportionate. It's not subtle, it's practically shouting.
And that confirms incapacitation. She was likely knocked out with chloroform before the pills?
Precisely. It moves this from just poisoning to assault, incapacitation, and then murder. She couldn't resist. This allows the barrister to say, quite confidently now, I think someone killed her. It's not just a theory anymore.
So the chain is, someone was there, cut mark, they came prepared, German pills, they used force, chloroform, and tried to hide it, lavender.
A solid chain of evidence based purely on observation and deduction so far. And before leaving the room, he notes one more thing, a framed photo on a table.
A photo? Of what?
Mrs. Parker and her late husband. The source says he died about 2 years earlier.
Why is that relevant right now? Just background, emotional context.
It's more than that, analytically. First, it establishes she had a past, a partnership. It raises immediate questions. What was her situation now, 2 years after his death? Finances, social connections.
Okay.
Second, if this were suicide, you might see the photo as evidence of lingering grief. But in a Meyer investigation, it becomes a potential clue to motive. Did the husband leave her money, property? Did the killer know the husband? It opens up lines of inquiry about her history and connections.
Gotcha. So it's context, but context that could point towards why someone might target her.
Exactly. It adds another layer to the victim's profile beyond just woman found dead.
Okay, so we have a staged homicide, incapacitation, rare drugs, someone else present. The next big step is finding out who, or at least who the killer wants them to think it was.
And that leads us straight to the creation of the false alibi, which means talking to the caretaker.
Mr. Simmons, described as nervous man with shifting eyes and calloused hands. Sounds like someone already on edge.
And the barrister picks up on that immediately. His interrogation technique here is, well, quite clever. He uses a very calm tone.
Why calm? Wouldn't you want to pressure him?
Ah, but the calmness does the pressuring for him. It unnerves Simmons even more. See, if the barrister was shouting, aggressive, Simmons could react defensively, blame the police pressure. But the calm questioning, it puts all the anxiety back onto Simmons himself. He has no external reason to be so nervous, so the nervousness looks like guilt.
Smart. So under this gentle pressure, Simmons talks.
He does. He admits someone visited Mrs. Parker the night before. Around 8 o'clock, a gentleman. Stayed about half an hour.
Providing a perfect window for the murder and an alibi for the killer being there and then leaving.
Exactly. And who did this visitor claim to be?
Her cousin.
Her cousin. It sounds plausible, familial, not immediately suspicious if someone else had seen him. It's the manufactured identity for the fake visitor.
And Simmons gives a very specific description, too. Tall, brown coat, small scar near the right eye. Why so detailed for a made-up person?
Ah, that's the clever part of the misdirection. If you just said, some guy visited, the police might ignore it as too vague. But giving specific, memorable details, the height, the coat, especially that scar.
Makes it sound real. Makes the police think they have a genuine lead to chase.
Precisely. It sends them off on a wild goose chase, looking for a man who doesn't exist. It buys the real killer time and diverts all the investigative resources away from anyone local, like, say, the caretaker.
The level of detail makes the phantom seem tangible, a real suspect.
And the barrister just takes this information calmly, nods along. But you can bet he's already thinking, okay, this cousin is likely our fiction. It's just too convenient, covering the exact time frame needed.
It's amazing how the local staging Simmons' story connects back to the earlier forensic detail, the German pills. There's another discovery that links these, right? Provides the why.
Yes, back in the apartment.
Yeah.
The barrister is still thinking about those pills, the German connection. He's searching for more context. In a desk drawer, he finds something else. A half-burned letter. It is written in German.
Wow, okay, that connects directly back to the pills. A German letter. What does it say?
It's damaged, partially burned, but a key phrase is readable. If you don't return what belongs to me, I'll come to London myself.
Whoa, that's a direct threat.
Absolutely. It implies Mrs. Parker was caught up in something serious, something involving Germany. Maybe debt, stolen goods, secrets we don't know exactly what belongs to me refers to. But it's clearly high stakes.
And it establishes she was under pressure, living in fear before the murder.
Right, and it makes the German pills suddenly seem less random. They're part of this bigger, threatening picture emerging from Germany. The threat wasn't abstract, it felt imminent.
So the barrister concludes.
He concludes someone from Germany was threatening her, or maybe warning her about someone else. But either way, the crucial point is she knew her killer.
Meaning it wasn't a random attack. The killer was connected to her life, to this German entanglement.
Exactly. It rules out the idea of, say, a burglary gone wrong. This was personal, targeted, linked to her history.
But hang on. If the killer, let's assume for a second it is, Simmons was so careful about staging the scene, removing the tup, using the lavender, inventing the cousin. Why leave a half-burned, incredibly incriminating letter like that behind? Why not burn it completely?
That's a fantastic question. It points to the killer's priorities and panic. If it was Simmons, what's his primary concern after the murder?
Covering his own tracks locally, right, making it look like suicide.
Exactly. His motive, as we'll see, is probably quite local, the stolen jewelry. So he might quickly search for anything linking him to a crime, maybe a note mentioning the theft. He finds this German letter, maybe realizes it's important or threatening, tries to destroy it hastily.
But maybe gets interrupted or just doesn't do a thorough job in his panic.
Precisely. He starts burning it, maybe hears a noise, thinks he's done enough, or just needs to get out. His focus isn't on erasing some complex international plot. It's on making sure nothing points to him in his petty theft.
So he unintentionally leaves behind the very evidence that establishes the context of fear she was living under, the context the killer exploited.
Yes, he tried to neutralize the local threat, exposure for theft, but failed to completely erase the background threat, the German letter. It's another crack in the illusion.
Okay, the picture is getting much clearer. We have the anomalies, the cup mark, the lavender, the fake cousin, the German letter. The barrister has built a strong case for homicide. What's next?
He needs the final objective piece, scientific confirmation to back up his deductions based on observation and smell.
The smoking gun, so to speak.
And it arrives with a phone call. Dr. Lewis, the coroner from St. Anne's Hospital, he's got the toxicology results. And they found traces of chloroform in her lungs, not just sleeping pills.
There it is. Direct scientific proof she was incapacitated.
Bingo. That's the moment his theory becomes forensic fact. No way it was accidental overdose now. No way it was assisted suicide. It confirms non-consensual chemical incapacitation before death. It's unequivocally murder.
So the barrister can now lay out the whole sequence.
Yes, he synthesizes everything. The body was placed on the bed after being incapacitated, maybe even after death, to create that too-peaceful look.
The illusion is completely exposed.
Totally shattered. The perfume, the cup mark, the fictional visitor, they were all just, as he puts it, the small cracks in a perfect illusion.
And the killer's mistake was trying too hard.
Exactly. Overcomplication. If they had just administered the pills and left, maybe the lack of a second cup mark is missed. But adding the lavender, inventing the cousin, these extra layers of deception created more anomalies, more things for an expert eye to catch.
Okay, the case is built, homicide confirmed, method understood, context established. Now for the final act, confronting the killer.
Right. Unmasking the person behind the illusion. And this needs to be handled very carefully, psychologically.
Because the barrister suspects Simmons, the caretaker, right? But Simmons' motive isn't the big German plot.
Exactly. Simmons likely stumbled onto the German letter while looking for something else. The barrister needs to trap Simmons, using the local crime, the jewelry theft, while maybe leveraging the confusion around the German connection.
How does he set the trap?
He calls Inspector Howard, tells him to bring Simmons down to the station the next morning. The key is getting Simmons onto neutral ground, police territory, where he feels less secure.
Removes his comfort zone.
Right. And when Simmons arrives, the barrister uses pure psychological pressure. He doesn't immediately accuse. He stands with his back turned, looking out a window, casual, almost dismissive.
Making Simmons even more anxious, expecting the attack.
Precisely. It dials up the internal pressure. Then, still calm, almost conversational, he drops the first bomb.
Which is?
We've identified the visitor you described. He lets that hang for a second. Then, he doesn't exist because you were the visitor.
Pulls the rug right out from under him, destroys the entire fabricated alibi in one sentence.
Simmons has nowhere to go. His entire defense relies on the cousin with the scar. If the cousin isn't real, Simmons has to either admit he lied, which implies guilt, or stick to a story the police now know is false.
He tries to deny it, stammers a bit.
Naturally. But the barrister turns then, gives him that sharp-as-glass stare. The psychological games are over. Now it's direct accusation.
And he starts breaking down how Simmons could have done it.
Methodically. Points out Simmons knew her routine inside out. He knew when she'd be alone, vulnerable, and crucially, you had her keys.
The keys, of course. As caretakers, he'd have access. But wait, if he had keys, why invent the cousin visiting at 8 p.m.?
Good point. The keys explain how he got in, but not when the death occurred in a way that clears him. If he just used his keys, he could say he found her during his rounds the next day. The fictional cousin creates a specific time frame, 8:00 p.m. visit, for the murder to happen, and provides a departing suspect, leaving Mrs. Parker conveniently alone to take the pills.
Ah, I see. The keys are opportunity. The cousin is the timeline deception.
Exactly. And then the barrister reveals the true motive. It wasn't about Germany.
It was the jewelry.
Yes. Mrs. Parker found out Simmons had been stealing her jewelry. She threatened to go to the police to ruin him.
So the motive fits the man. Nervous, calloused hands. Not some international spy, but a petty thief, terrified of exposure.
Perfectly tailored. He used his job access, keys, his knowledge of her habits, silenced her quickly, chloroform, then staged the scene using the pills he likely found, maybe even those specific German ones if they were already there due to the other issue, or perhaps he acquired them as part of his panic plan.
Simmons must be completely cornered now. What does he do?
He starts to crumble, but still clings to the idea it wasn't planned. He needs that final push.
The final piece of evidence.
And Inspector Howard delivers it. Steps forward, provides the physical link. We found your fingerprints on the German envelope.
The envelope of the threatening letter, that's devastating.
It's the ultimate contradiction. Why would the caretaker, whose motive is local theft, be handling a threatening letter from Germany? It proves he was searching her private things, probably looking for proof she was going to expose him. His prints place him right in the middle of her private affairs before she died.
And no way to explain that away.
None. The weight is just too much. Simmons breaks completely, falls back on the classic excuse. She said she'd ruin me. I didn't mean to. It was an accident. Trying to lessen the intent.
But the barrister doesn't buy the accident plea.
Not for a second. He delivers that final cutting line. Murder rarely begins as an accident. It only ends that way.
Powerful. He sees the whole chain getting the chloroform, staging the scene, inventing the cousin as deliberate choices leading to one inevitable outcome. The death itself might have been messy, but the path there was intentional.
Absolutely. It's a profound statement about intent versus outcome.
What an incredible breakdown. From just a tiny detail, a missing cut mark, he unraveled the whole thing. Okay, so let's recap this whole process for you, the listener. We've really dissected how this perfect illusion fell apart, and we can see the core thinking skills the barrister used.
It all started because the police saw the obvious body, pills, suicide. The barrister trained himself to ignore the obvious conclusion and zoom in on the things that didn't fit.
Principle number 1, question the physical staging. That single cut mark, or the trace of where it was on the nightstand, that tiny detail invalidated the alone premise right away. It teaches us that sometimes the absence of something expected is the real clue, especially if you suspect staging.
Right. And that physical clue led directly to the method. Detecting that super strong lavender sent a sensory anomaly. That suggested a masking agent pointing to chloroform, which toxicology later confirmed. The lesson there. Trying to hide one truth often reveals a bigger, more dangerous one.
Then we saw the psychological game with the false witness. Mr. Simmons creating that incredibly detailed but totally fake cousin with the scar. That shows us that sometimes too much detail, too much complexity in an alibi is actually a sign of fabrication, designed purely to mislead.
Exactly. And finally, those rare German pills and the half-burned German letter. They provided the background noise, the context of threat and conflict. But when combined with the simple facts, Simmons had the keys, Simmons had the local motive, jewelry theft, it all snapped into place. The local crime used the backdrop of the bigger fear.
So the main takeaway really is that the whole suicide story only held up because people tend to ignore or explain away the little things, the small cracks, that don't fit the easy narrative.
We have to train ourselves, like the barrister, to see the anomaly not as an inconvenience, but as potentially the most crucial piece of data we have.
Which leads perfectly into that deeper philosophy the barrister mentions later to his associate, Nix.
Yes, those quiet words. Evil hides in details, Nix. That's where truth is buried.
It really sums it up, doesn't it? The most convincing lies aren't usually grand, sweeping statements. They're built from carefully arranged, small, ordinary facts. So the truth has to be dug out from those same small facts.
It takes real intellectual honesty to look at a pill bottle and a glass of water, and instead focus on the faint ring beside the glass. It means resisting the easy answer.
Don't accept appearances, especially if they seem too neat, too perfectly packaged. Always ask, what little thing doesn't quite fit? What detail was maybe overlooked when this story was put together?
Right. Maintain that healthy skepticism.
And as the story ends, the barrister makes that final point about law versus truth.
The law punishes, but truth redeems. That's the difference between judgment and justice.
What does he mean by that in this context?
Well, the initial judgment, the police ruling of suicide, would have effectively punished Mrs. Parker's memory, labeling her wrongly. Justice, however, required finding the truth that she was murdered. That truth redeems her memory, clarifies she was a victim, not someone who gave up.
So the truth provides a deeper resolution than just the legal finding.
Exactly. It elevates it beyond just punishment for the killer.
And that brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. Something to mull over, based on how fragile this whole case was.
Yeah. Think about this. What if Inspector Howard hadn't felt those doubts? What if he just shrugged off the missing note? The neighbor saying she was happy? What if he hadn't called the barrister?
The case would have been closed, suicide, end of story.
Would justice have been served then? Or would the law have simply failed the victim because those tiny details, the cup mark, the overpowering lavender, were ignored?
It makes you think about the weight of small details in our own lives, doesn't it? When we analyze things at work or news stories or even just something someone tells us.
How often do we just skim past the little inconsistencies because the main story seems plausible enough?
The fog eventually clears, life goes on.
But the truth is always there, waiting for someone disciplined enough to look closely enough to find it.
And that's our deep dive into the perfect illusion of the Maple Street murder. Thanks for listening.
We hope you keep looking closely at the details. Until next time.